you don't speak their language, you are likely to employ someone to translate for you when you speak English to any of the Spanish people. Okay, so that person does not necessarily have to understand, I mean, the person you are speaking to does not necessarily have to understand the English you are speaking. So your interpreter will be the one to tell them that, okay, so what you are saying is Kofi is a boy. So that's how Python works. The code that you write in Python, it picks it up and then it translates it into bit codes, that's zeros and ones. And then it sends it to the computer for the PC to understand it as a machine language. So with this, it makes the compiling of codes very fast than other compilers like GNU, right? So Python is mostly used for backend programming for data analysis. I mean, the main purpose of Python is for data analysis or translating data or generating data. So you find out that Python is used for machine learning, for artificial intelligence, and data science. That's because with Python, it has packages, libraries in it that helps you to easily make this analysis, like NumPy and Panda, right? So Python is easy to learn and has simple syntax. The syntax of Python is very readable as well. It's like you're reading English. You can have a syntax like, if Kofi is boy, you get it, which you cannot find in other languages like Java or C++. All right, so you see examples as are going on. All right, so a variable, you know what variables are? Those who have little experience in Python, in programming. A variable is used to store values or data, right? So let's say Kofi is data, right? The string Kofi is data, or the word Kofi is data. You want to store it into something so that you can use it later on. That's what variables are used for. So you store values into it so that in your coding, right, as you're writing the code, in case you want to use that particular variable, you don't have to retype Kofi again. You just have to call the variable name, right? So you can see that examples of data types are string, integers, decimals, boolean, and sets. We'll get to see examples of these data types. All right. So examples is this. So you can see message, and then message equals to Kofi is a boy. Message here is the variable name, right? And Kofi is a boy, is a string. Okay. And then age. Age is a variable name, and then the number value here, 23 here, is integer. So integer is a data type name, and the variable is age. So data types store your values into your processor, so that it can be easily referenced. If you've learned something like, if you've learned C++ before, I'm sure you come across something called pointers. So pointers, normally you put an asterisk in front of your variable name, that will store it in the special place in your CPU for you. All right, so, and then there's amount. So you can see the value here is 23.50, which is a decimal. So in programming, it is called floating point numbers. So in floating point numbers, we have the double and then we have the float itself. Then Boolean. So Boolean is either true or false, 0 or 1. Yes. 0 being false and 1 being true. And we have items. So in Python, we store series of variables as items. So we have, it is normally called sets. So a set could be either a list, a tuple, or a dictionary. We'll get to see examples of this and how to work with them. So in other languages, you get to know something called array, right? I mean, in C++, JavaScript, Java, and others, they normally call these arrays, but in Python, we call it sets. All right. So sets. So sets, as I mentioned, there are three in types. We have the list, we have the tuple, and then we have the dictionary. So a list stores a series of items in a particular order. So the example will be, we have this square brackets, right? And then we have the values in it. So you can see that in this instance, we are not storing only one particular value. We are storing a couple of values in a particular curly or square bracket. All right. I hope you guys are following.
Yeah, we are following.
Any confusion so far?
Guys, please, if you don't understand anything, ask so.
Right. And then we have tuples. So tuples are also like lists, but in this case, they have the round brackets or the circle brackets. So you can see that the difference between the obvious difference between the list and the tuples is that with the list, DS is the square brackets, and then the tuples has the round bracket. So with these two types of sets, you can store different data types, whether string, whether double, float, boolean. It doesn't store specific data. You can store any kind of data in it. All right. So with dictionary, right? Dictionary stores values with custom keys. So a custom key here will be when to go back to the list and then the tuples. List and tuples stores defined or predefined keys or indexes. That's what we call it, indexes or index. So let's say for the value Bob, right? The index of Bob will be 1 because it starts counting from 0. So the first one will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. We'll get to see when we're doing the practicals, we'll get to see how we can access these values with the index I'm talking about. So when it comes to dictionaries allows you to store this particular index yourself, like to define this particular index yourself instead of following how a list to be like, okay, so your first index here will be 0. I can see that with this example for a dictionary, the first index here is name, the second one is age, and the third one is school. You get it? And you can see that I'm storing different types of data. So the name is storing Isaac Soa as the data, the age is storing 30 as the data, and the school is storing GTUC as the data. All right. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please ask.
Okay, so I realized in the dictionary example,
Yes.
there are strings and then there are integers.
Yes.
But then with the tuple and then list, it's either they are all strings or they are all integers. Is there a reason why?
I don't know whether you heard me. I said that when it comes to sets, you can store any type of data types in it. You don't have particular like a list of only strings or a list of only integers. You can have val 1, mia 2, ned, and maybe 2.3 in the same list set.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, so we are going on to lists. So you can see that what I said about a list is that a list stores a series of items in a particular order, right? So we have a list of bikes, right? Bike types. We have the Trek, Redlines, and Giant bikes, right? So I'm trying to access the first item of the bike, and I'm using the index 0. And I'm trying to access the last index, and I'm using the index -1. So this indexing that we're using in Python is also called slicing, right? We'll get to talk about slicing as well. So to add an item to a list, we have bikes, and then there's this function that comes to every list called append. You get it? So when you're appending, when you type in the value in the brackets, it stores it as part of the items of the list. And slicing, as I said, so slicing, you can see that normally for the first one that I did to get the first item, I did bikes, square brackets 0, right? But if I want to get the first two items of the list, thanks to slicing, I can do :2, right? So the colon takes a couple of values. We'll get to talk about slicing too later, so you don't worry. We are removing an item from a list. We use a method called remove. So dot remove, and then the value that you want to remove from the list, you put the value in the quotes or double quotes as well. Any questions about this? We'll get to practice about it. We'll get to practice about lists very soon. We're done with the slides.
So,
So we get to
I have a question.
please ask.
It means like Java, functions here are called methods. Is that what I am made to understand?
No, please. So there's a whole thing about functions and methods, right? Let me take this to explain this. A function is a standalone block, right? When I say standalone, you get to see what I'm trying to say. When we talk about methods, a method is a function which is under a class. You get it? So when you create a class, in my next session, I'll be talking about object-oriented programming, which a class and classes and objects are parts. So it's like we're moving two ahead. So the main difference is that a function is a standalone block, and then a method is a block which is under a class. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
All right.
It does. But in C++, I think all will be called functions.
Yes, I mean, C++, we mainly use functions. We hardly use classes.
And in Java, we call all of them methods.
Exactly, because we mainly use classes in Java.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so dictionaries. So dictionary, an example of a dictionary is, an example here, I have a variable called animal, right? So animal equals to this set of items in the dictionary. You can see that in the dictionary, there's this curly braces that encodes it, right? So have an animal type being mammal, the legs 4, it has tail, true, the name is a cat, the pet's name is Lillian, right? So if you're accessing a value in this particular dictionary, you can do so by having the animal, the variable name, right? And then the index name. So you can see that I have an index name called pet name. So if I try to access pet name, the resulting value will be Lillian. Okay, so if I want to add an item to the dictionary, right? I'm going to just call the animal variable and then the item or the key or the index that I want to add. You can see I have gender, which gender is not already part of the dictionary here. And I can easily equate gender to any value that I want. In this instance, female, right? Any questions so far about dictionaries? All right, so let me continue. Conditional statements. So in programming language, we have conditional statements. We have if statements, we have if else statements, or if else nested statements, right? And then there's also a conditional statement called ternary statements. So a ternary statement is a one-line if statement, like a shorter if else statement. Instead of having it in different lines of codes, a ternary makes it only one line, right? So with conditional statements, you are normally going to be using some logical operators, right? Like in this instance, called conditional tests, equals, not equals, greater than, or equals to, less than, or equals to, right? So we use the normal signs, equals to 42, equals to, I have a variable called x, which is not equals to 42. So when you say a value is equals to 42, it has to return either true, because it's logical. When it comes to logical operators, we're either returning a true statement or a false statement. Am I making sense to anyone?
Yes.
All right. So let me go on. We'll see what a if statement looks like. So this is a simple if statement, right? If age is greater than or equals to 14, you can print a statement called you can vote, right? So you can see that this block of codes is just tested if a person is above or equals to 18 years, right? And if you look at an if else statement, it says that if the person's age is less than 4, which is from 3 to anything less than 4, yes, then you print you are still a baby, right? Else, if the person's age is more than 17, that means we're talking about someone who is between 8, who is from 18 and above, right? You can see that the person is, you are grown now. Else, we are saying that you are still growing up or still a baby. So the else statement here will print any value between 5 and from 5 and 17. Yes, from 5 and 17. So from 5 and 17, you are still a child or you are still growing. All right. The next one, the next slide, where's the next slide? Okay. Examples with conditional tests, right? So I have a variable called grades. It has a list of, you can see that this is a square bracket. So we're talking about a list of grades from 40 to 100, right? So if 40 in grades, so I'm saying here that, you see I'm using a new thing here called in. So in Python is a keyword which is used to evaluate whether a particular value or a particular statement is in another statement. So you can see in this instance, I'm saying that if 40 is in the list, which is great, right? Then print F, that means the person has failed. Okay, so example 2 says that age equals to 50, right? If the person's age is more than or equals to 18, and the person's age, right, is less than or equals to 50, you can print that the person, you can still, you are still a youth. Sorry, error here. You are still a youth. So this particular if statement here checks between the person's age between 18 and then 50, which is 18 and 15 being inclusive, right? And then else if also checks if the person's age is more than 15 and the person's age is less than 60, that's from 51 to 59, then we are saying that the person is getting to retirement, right? If the person's age is less than 18 and the person's age is more than 15, that means from 17 or from 13 to 17, the person is still they are in their teens, right? So this block, this simple block here is testing with the conditional test that we saw earlier. We are going to test this code in practicals as well. Right, so this is a ternary operator I was talking about. So ternary operators will evaluate a statement based on the condition being true or false, right? We have an example here, A equals to 10, and then B equals to 20, right? Normally, if you are using an if statement, we would do this. If B is more than A, then the minimum value here will be B, right? What we are saying is that if 20 is more than A, right, then the minimum value should be B. Fiji statement actually is not right. But looking at the ternary, this is an example of the ternary here. Looking at the ternary, right, we are saying the minimum equals to A if B is more than A, else B. You can see that this is an if statement, and I've simplified it into a one-liner, right? So if I'm to print out B, if I'm to print out minimum or min, the value here is going to be either A or B based on the conditions here. Am I making sense to anyone? I'm confusing you rather.
So if you are printing min, are you going to get a Boolean value?
So if you're printing min, right, you're going to get the value of either A or B. You can see it says that min equals to A if B is more than A, else B. So else min equals to B. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So let's continue. Loop statements.
And
Open
please,
languages-
Mr. Emma,
I'm listening. Yes, please.
I'm taking you back to the next, the previous two slides. The compound operators.
All right. The
The
conditional.
compound operators. Yeah,
Is it
here.
this?
No, go down. Come down back. Yes, this ones.
Okay.
You know, in other languages, if you are using compound operator, and I think we use the ampersand sign. Two of
Exact. Exact. Two ampersands, and then all will be the straight lines, right?
it. Yes.
Two of the. Yeah. So
Exactly.
Python, as I said in the first slide, Python is readable. Do you get it?
Yes.
So this is a typical example of Python being readable. So you can, anyone who sees this line of code will know what you're trying to do. Because, I mean, before anyone who has gone to school knows that the sign, knows the sign for greater than, and then knows the sign for equals to. So the person can easily read that age is greater than or equals to 18 and age is less than or equals to 15. Do you get it?
Yes.
So Python makes coding or your lines of code readable to anyone else. All right. So loop statements are statements that will continue running until you have something stopping it or until a false statement is reached. Right. Okay. So in other languages, we have different types of loop statements. We have the while loop, we have the while do loop, we have the do while loop, we have the for loop statement, right? I think in Visual Basic we have until, we have a statement that is until something. I've forgotten about that one. All right. So,
And in Java
but
too,
in
we have
Python,
the for each.
you have the for each. Yes, it's
For
true.
each, yes.
I think C++ has the for each as well.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
that's true. That's
PHP,
true.
PHP has for each. So I think it's all the other languages have for each. It's only Python that doesn't do for each. All right. So Python has just two types of loops. We have the while loop and then the for loop. So in Python, we normally use a while loop to repeat a block of code as long as a certain condition remains true, right? So we can say that until you are 18 years, you cannot vote. So if you're using that for a while loop, you're going to check every year whether, I mean, that block of code is going to check every year whether you're 18 years. So if you're 18 years, and it's going to print out that you can now vote. You get it? That's what while loops do. They check a certain lines of code or condition. If that condition is true, it will repeat a line of codes until there's a false statement is hit, done. Then it will stop. All right. So the for loop is, it iterates over a sequence, either a list, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, or a string, right? So you can see that there's a string here. So that means in Python, you can use for loops to iterate over the characters of a string. So let's say a string being Kofi is a boy, you can use a for loop to iterate over it. Maybe you want to get all the eyes in Kofi is a boy, you can use a for loop to do that. We'll get to see how it works, right? And then a while loop. So this is an example of a while loop, right? Current value is 1. So while the current value is less than or equals to 5, prints the current value. So this one, the first iterator will be 1, right? Then you can see that I'm doing some increment value here, plus or equals to 1. So it will add up 1 to the value here, which is already 1, then to make the current value 2, right? So the next loop will check 2 greater than or less than or equals to 5, which is true. Then it will print out the 2. Then to come and add 1 to the 2, making it 3. Then it comes back to check. So the 3 greater than or less than 5, true. If it's true, to print it out. It comes to add. Then it comes to check again. Is the 4 greater than or equals to 5, which is true. Then it comes to, it prints it out, it has 1 to it. Is a 5 greater than or equals to 5, which is true, right? It prints it out, it comes to add 1 to it, then it comes again. is a 6 greater than or equal to 5, which is false, then it will stop. Is everyone getting the sense of what this code will do?
Yes.
Yes.
It's going to print 1 to 5, 1 to 4.
Right. No, it will print
1 to
out
5.
5.
Less than or equal to, it will print 1 to 5.
Yes, less than or equal to print 1 to 5.
Mr. Emma,
Yes, please ask your question.
how different is this incremental code from the current value plus plus?
It's the
What do you
same.
need to do?
It's the same. You know the incremental values. We have the plus plus, we have the plus equals to, and we have the plus one. There are three types.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can
So if
do
we use current value plus plus here, it works.
it will work. It will work.
Thank you.
Any other question from anyone else? Okay. So let's continue. So this is a for loop, right? So for loop, as I said, uses an iterator to iterate over a sequence. So we have a list called bikes, right? I'm using the same variable we used earlier on. So this bikes has a list of items, track, red line, giant, right? And this loop is going to loop through all the items in the list. So for bike, the bike here being the iterator, and then the bikes here being the variable. So normally in other languages or in other examples, you see them doing for I in bikes, right? So I standing for iterator. So I'm using this example for you to know that the I is not a constant. You can use other variable names. So in this case, I'm using bike as the iterator. So in languages like C++, you normally write it as for into brackets, I equals to 0, I is less than the length of the bikes, and then you have the increments value as well. Python makes it simpler. Python says that you don't need to write all those kinds of code. You just have to do for bike in bikes, then you just print out the value of the bike. So this one, it will print out a list of the bikes. So the first one will be trek, right? And the second one will be the red line. The third one will be the giant. Right. Any questions about this? All right, so let me continue. List comprehension.
It means that you could have used, does it mean you could have used any other variable name? As you did for bikes and bikes, you could have used for table and bikes to mean that table is the variable name.
Yeah, table is the iterator.
Yes. So that if you come to the print statement, you come and print table.
You come and print table, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So list comprehension offers a shorter or simpler syntax for creating a new list based on the values of existing lists, right? So I'm introducing new things here, right? We have an example here. So squares equals to x star 2 for x in range 1 to 11. So range is a special method in Python. It checks it either checks the length of a particular IP set or list or object, right? Or you can use it to create. So in this case, I'm using a starter as 1, and then it will end at 11. You get it? So if I want to print out all the numbers from 1 to 11, I can easily do for x in range 1 to 11, then to print out all of them. But in this example, what I'm trying to get is to get the exponential values, right? So for x in range 1, right? So the first range will be 1. So 1 exponential 2 will be 1, right? And then the next one will be 2. 2 exponential 2 will be 4. 4. All right. So we're going to see how this works when we do the practicals. So this particular statement will give the exponential values 1 to 11. All right, so user inputs. So user input is very common in every language. They normally have a way of receiving data from the user, right? Either through console or through terminal or wherever. So in Python, to receive data from a user, we use a method called or a function called input, right? So the input allows you to enter a prompt string or a prompt term or a prompt phrase to the user, so that when you try to run the code, it will print out the prompt first and gives way for the user to enter the value that they want to enter, and then to store that value into the variable that you are trying to create. We'll get to see how this works. We'll test it with other data types, numbers, and all that. Right, so a function, as I said before, functions are named blocks of code designed to do one specific job, right? So if you've built a system before, you realize that a system has different parts. You normally start with the login part, and then you come with the homepage part, and you go to other features, right? Other features of the system. So someone has posted a comment. Yes, thank you very much. I think it will print 1 to 10. Exactly. Thank you very much. Samuel Kufijima. Thank you. We'll test how it works, and then we'll get to a test whether or assess whether it will print 1 to 11 or 1 to 10. All right. So as I was saying before, so the login codes, right? You don't want to mix everything, all the codes from the dashboard, from the login to the dashboard to the other features of your system, because it will make it very difficult to read the code in the future, even for others to also continue with your coding, right? In case you're no more with the company or no more handling that particular project. So functions makes your work easier. It makes you group your codes into blocks, simpler, or small blocks, so that you can easily call them when you need them, can easily change them or make changes to them without having to go through a lot of lines of codes. Right? Wow. All right, so let's continue. Thank you for the sound check. So information passed to a function is called an argument, and the information received by a function is called a parameter. We'll see what the difference is between an argument and then a parameter. So this is an example of a function. So in Python, to create a function block, you have to have a keyword called def, starting with it, and then the function name. So in this instance, the function name is add numbers, right? And then to make sure it is a block of codes, right? In Python, every block of codes has to have the colon sign, and then the next line of code should have 4 spaces or a tab, right? So your keyboard, the tab is 4 spaces. So instead of having 4 spaces or a tab, right? So that every code which is under the particular function will be under the indentation. We normally call it indentation. Right? So we have a variable called A, another variable called B, right? I'm hoping someone will ask me a question about this. So yeah, A and then B. So equals to 2 and then 3. A being 2 and then B being 3, right? So this function is just adding numbers, right? So it is going to do sum equals to A plus B. And when you print it out, the function will return the summation of the 2 numbers. So you can see that this 1, 2, 3 lines are under the function, right? They're all under the same line or the same block. And then this particular add numbers here is outside it, which is on the same line as the def, right? So it means that the function starts from here, and then ends here, right? And then the next line of code, which is the add numbers, is I'm trying to call the function to see what the function does. All right. So functions with arguments. So an argument in programming language is the kind of information that you want the function to receive. So there are variable names. You can see that I have A and then B, right? So when I'm creating this function and I have A and then B, and then A plus B is what I want this function to do, just to add these two numbers. And then when I call the function, it's going to print. You see that I'm passing the values, right? So A being 2, and then B being 3. So these are values that you're passing to the function. Okay. And then we are looking at functions with default parameters. So parameters, as I said before, is the information which is being received by the function. You can see that I have 2 here. I'm giving it a default parameter of 2. I mean A here, default parameter of 2, and then B here, default parameter of 3. So when you call this function and you don't pass any value to it, it is going to print out the summation of 2 and then 3. But in case you want to pass in, you can see that the name here is default parameters, right? So in case you don't want to use the default parameters, then you have to pass in your own parameters, which is here in this instance, 4 and then 3, 4 and then 5. Okay. So function with return statement. So in programming, a return statement it's like, okay, so we have a function, right? Whatever logics we have in that function, at the end of the day, it's supposed to have a value. You get it? It has to have something that it represents. So we have this function here still adding 2 numbers, and we are returning the sum. So in this instance, we can equate this particular function here to another variable, and that variable will hold the value or the amounting value of the function. So in this instance, we have a sum, which is a variable, which is being assigned, which is having we have the add numbers being assigned to a variable called sum, right? And the parameters that we are passing here is 1 and then 3. 1 being A and then 3 being B, right? So when we print out sum, it's going to print out the value that this function is returning, which is 4. All right, so any questions about functions? Okay, I think.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
It's like somebody wanted to talk.
Hello, sir.
Gilbert.
Yes. Sir,
Yeah,
please.
ask your
Let's say you're writing a multiple, a very long code, and let's say probably under multiple classes or something. There may be places where you will be needing some additions. So in that case, instead of actually hard typing the addition of whatever you want to add, you can just call the function over there, and then the addition will take place there.
Awesome. It take place there. Yes, that's a typical use of a function. So you can, when you create a function, you can use it in any part of your code. You get it. You can see that in this example, I'm even using it as a variable. I'm storing it into a variable. You can use the function in a class. You can use it you can even use the function in another function as well. Yeah. Any other question?
Is that just the basic structure of the function? For instance, if you have other code lines that will go into the function, how are you going to? Well, I know that in other high-level languages, C++, Java, you put your code in the curly brackets, the curly braces.
You see, Python doesn't want you to have that stress, having to type opening brackets, opening curly brackets, and closing curly brackets. Python says that, you know what, just put the colon here, and then any code that you want to put under the function, just indent them under the function. Do you get it?
Yes.
All the codes that you don't want to be under the function, you just don't put it under the indentation of that particular function.
Okay.
All right. Any other question? Awesome. Let's continue. All right. These are other things that we will do practically: splitting and slicing, parsing functions. We have in Python, conversion functions. We have ints, we have str, we have floats, we have lists, we have dates, we have tuple. All of them, we'll try them and see what they do. Concatenation and interpolation. Have anyone heard of concatenation before?
Concatenation we have heard, but the interpolation is a big word.
Awesome. We got to know what interpolation does. And concatenation also does. And lambda functions too. It's a cool thing that we'll learn in the practicals as well. So we'll do this sample. We'll continue. All right, so this for next session. All right, so now let's open. If you I'm sure everyone have installed Python on PC already. The last session I made those install Python on their PC. So I'm assuming you guys have also done that.
In fact, no. Some of us were not part of the last session. To be very open to you, I particularly haven't installed it.
How many people have not installed Python on their PC?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I want to know how to download the Django.
Sorry about that. We don't download Django. Terminal. Are you? Do you have
No.
All right, so don't worry. We'll get to Django in I think the 3rd week or 4th week. We'll get to see how awesome Django is and how to work with Django. All right. So how many people have not installed the Python? I want to see the number so that I'll know whether we have to spare some 10-20 minutes for that. All right. One person has raised their hand. All right. So Robert, what do we do? Do we spare some time for this for like 10 minutes? I should have asked this before we started so that you guys will be installing this whilst we are doing the presentation. Robert. All right. So I'm giving you guys 10 minutes, right? Open your browser. Let me share my browser so that you see as I'm doing.
Senior Robert. Hello. Senior Robert.
Okay. Can everyone see my browser? Right, so search for Python address, right? And then go to Python website. They have the download button here. You can download the latest, you have to download the latest version. Click here, and then it will bring you to this page, right?
Yeah, kindly pause the recording. It says we are to download Python and install. Yes. Okay, no problem. Then it should go ahead. No, it's just 10 minutes. No problem. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Those who are downloaded. Right. So from here, scroll down here, depending on your version, right? Your PC that you're using. Select, if you're using Windows, select whether 32 bits or 34 bits. Wait, this is not what we are supposed to. Let me go to downloads and check and be sure from here. All right, come to downloads instead, right? Then download, there's a download button here. You can download depending on the version that you want. I'll advise that you download the latest version instead. I mean, latest version. So when you download it, right, try to install as well. I want one of you who's downloading it to share their screen so that I'll guide you through the process for everyone else to follow suit.
So can I share mine?
Yes, please share your screen.
All right, sir.
Share.
He said you cannot.
So the people who are supposed to join after the installation should be made aware so that they can join.
Okay, thank you.
We have done that.
Awesome.
They wanted to restart the recording. I asked that. I called Robert that he should pause the recording so that when we finish the installation, so that all the installation things doesn't go into the recording. It makes it unnecessarily long.
Yeah.
Because we'll be uploading it on our YouTube handle.
Okay, you have a YouTube handle.
Yes, please.
Perfect. Yes. All right, so we are going to start from basics. Go open your start menu, search for Python, and then click on the Python IDLE icon. When you search for Python, you see Python IDLE. So the Python IDLE will open a page like this. Can everyone see my screen? I still see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, please.
All right. So we talked about variables, right? So a variable is a place holding a name, right? That can store different types of information. Right. So we can have, let's say, have a variable called age, right? And I say age equals to 30, right? And I hit enter, and I come and do print age, right? You can see that it has print out 30. So any part of this code that I'm writing, if I'm to call the variable age, I'm going to get the value 30 for it. Okay, so we have, that's for integer. So let's say I have another variable called amount, which is equal to 35,000 and then 50 pesos, right? When I print amount, I'm going to get this value. I hope you guys are trying. I want you guys to be trying as I'm doing so that if you are not getting the same output or results as I'm getting, you can work out your problem. Okay. Okay, so then I'm going to have a string called name, which will be equals to SOA, right? If I print out SOA, if I print out name, I see that I'm getting SOA as the value output. Okay. So let's say I'm going to receive input from the terminal, right? Remember we talked about user input. So we have A equals to sentence equals to inputs, right? So I remember I said that with user input, you first have to state a prompt, right? A prompt. So you can see that the title or the It says that prompt equals to none. So you have to enter a prompt. So I'm going to enter a prompt saying enter a simple sentence. Right, closing quotes and then closing brackets. When I hit enter, right, you can see that there's this prompt saying that enter a sentence. So my sentence will be Kofi is a boy. This not looking like I want to do it. When I do print sentence, let me try again. So sentence equals to all right, so when I call sentence, right, it prints out Kofi is a boy. So I receive the user inputs and then it stores the value inside the variable called sentence, right? These are guys trying it as well.
Why is the word is in red?
Yeah, because it's the keyword. That was what I was contemplating about. But I mean, the terminal, this Python console knows that we are trying to receive data from the user. So it's no big issue. All right, so we've seen how user inputs works, right? Remember I talked about, I'm going to talk about parsing functions. So when it comes to user inputs, the input function receives only string. So the information that you store or receive from the user, it will receive it as a string. But in a situation whereby you want to, someone saying something.
I got an error.
What error are you getting?
I tried to print the sentence and it's saying trace back most recent call last.
Please share your screen. Let's see your screen.
Yes, this is it.
All right, so you did sentence equals to, and then confuse the sentence. So you see your spellings of the sentence is different from the variable sentence. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, let me see. So it has come.
Awesome. Is anyone an error? I'm guessing everyone is fine, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you see when he called only sentence, he got the output with a single quote around it, right? But when I called print with the sentence in the print parameters, it printed it without the quote. So the print function will always remove the quotes around the value that you are trying to get. All right. So as I was saying, the input function here will output your value as a string, even if you are storing numbers or you are trying to receive numbers from the user. So you, the programmer, have to find a way to pass or convert that particular string into the data type or the value that you want, or the value type you want to get, right? So I'm going to create a variable called basic salary, right? Which is going to receive an input from the user. So enter your basic salary, right? Okay. So you see that when I hit enter, it says enter a basic salary, right? And then when I enter my basic salary, let's say I earn 100 cedis every month, I hit enter and I try to call basic salary.
Man.
See, it has put it in quotes. It is receiving it as a string. You get it? So the 100 here, you cannot use it for any calculation because you cannot add a string, an integer. All right. So what you have to do here in this case is to, let's say I'm creating a variable again, basic salary, right? I have to now pass it into an int. So Python has this int passer or converter, right? Your basic salary. Right, so when I hit enter, what's this? Wow, hold on. Basic. It's the last int bracket. Right, so this bracket will close the input function and this one will close the int function. When I hit enter, it is asking me to enter my salary, right? So when I enter, let's say 3,000, hit enter, and I print out basic salary. You see that the difference between the 3,000 and the 100 is that the 100 is in quotes, which makes it a string. And then the 20,000 doesn't have any quotes around it. So that is the work of the input or the int parser. So the int parser, whatever you put or whatever value it is, whether it is a double, a float, or a string, it will convert it into, if it is convertible. Let's say if you have a string, Kofi is a boy cannot be a number. So in that case, you won't be able to pass, you get an error. You won't be able to pass that particular string into an integer. But if you have a string, which is a number or a float or a double, you can easily pass it as well because the int parser can receive it and pass it. Right. So let's try more other passes, right? We're going to try floats. Okay, so we have Celsius equals to please, this is an accurate number, so don't worry about it. Just put in a value. Right. So when I try to do print float, right, Celsius, right, I'm going to get this as, the full decimal value will show. Okay. The next thing we can try is string, right? So the Celsius here is a float. Let's say we want to make it into a string. I can now do print str and then Celsius. Right. When I hit print, it has actually converted this, right? Let me do it this way so that you see the difference here. All right, and I print, I'm gonna just call Celsius. right? You see that in this case, it has converted a number into a string. That is why you have the quotes around it. Please, are you guys also trying as well? I have many challenges. Okay, so let's look at what a set is, right? The different types of sets, the lists, the tuples, and then the dictionary. So I'm creating a variable called my list, which will be a list of fruits, right? So banana, apple, and then orange, right? Okay. So when I come here and I do print my list, it's going to print out the list. Right. So let's say I want to get the banana value, right, from the list. Like I said before, you can do my list and then you index it. So the index of banana will be 0, right? Then to print out banana for me. What if I want to get orange? So I'll do my list. So to get the last index, you do -1. You hit enter to print out orange. If I want to get the first two, I'll do my list. And then the colon, and 2. Hit enter to print out banana, and then apple. What if I want to get the last two? Can anyone suggest what we have to do? All right. Okay, that prints out only orange.
Let's do this one and then empty. You can even do it empty.
Yeah. All right. So starting from the first, the index 1, which is apple, right? So banana is index 0, apple is index 1. So I'm starting from index 1, and then I'm ending at forever or how long the particular list items are. All right. So I'm going to try slicing with a string, right? So I'm going to have a variable called a sentence. We have a sentence variable already, right? Let me call and see. We have Kofi is a boy, right? So what if I want to print out only Kofi? Can do sentence and then starting from 0. So if it's 0, you don't even have to type the 0. The system will assume that when you exempt any value from the first part of the colon, it means you are trying to get the first index of that particular set or string. So for Kofi, we can do starting from K being 0, O being 1, F being 2, and I being 3. We'll do colon. The next item you have to call is 4. All right. So we hit, we can get Kofi. You get it? Because the fourth one is always exempted. When you're trying to slice, they always exempt the fourth or the last part of the slicing you want to do. The variable there or the value there is always exempted. All right. So what if I want to get only boy? So to do this, we can either count from the start of it to get boy, or we can easily index or start getting the values from the end of the list, right? So let's do from the end of the list. So y will be -1, o will be -2, and then b will be -3. So we'll do colon -3, and easily get
We'll start from 0.
I mean, yeah, colon minus, we start from 0. We should what?
Start from -1.
-1, right?
Yes.
No, just minus 3. This will work.
I thought you would have done -3 colon. If the colon come behind the -3, wouldn't that work?
Come again.
If the colon come after the -3, wouldn't that work? -3 colon.
Awesome. 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 Thank you very much. All right, that one works fine. All right, so I hope you guys are getting what we are trying to do. We're trying to work with a list as well. So like I said, the difference between the list and the tuple is that one is a square bracket, a round bracket. And another more vivid or detailed difference is that with a list, you can do operations like add to a list, remove to a list, and all those things. But with a tuple is fixed. The values of a tuple are fixed. You are not able to manipulate a tuple. So you have, let's say I'm creating a variable called my tuple, and to contain numbers, right? So even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? So with this one, it's a set. When I call my tuple, it's a set. I won't be able to do my tuple dot append like the way we can do for list. We'll see the example for a list very soon. So append, let's say 12, right? You're going to get an error. You get it? So tuples doesn't have any attribute called append. But when I try to do the same for my variable called my list, which has a list of fruits, I'm going to add a fruit, mango. And I call my list again. You see that if we have my mango, the mango value as part of the items, right? Likewise, we can remove as well. So my list dot remove, we are going to remove orange. I'm sure someone is thinking, so what's the importance of all of this in Django or in programming? So for your logical thinking or for your ability to know what to use when you face a situation in programming or you are building a system, you have to understand these tools, right? How to use a list, how to use a tuple, and all those things. So you can see we don't have orange as part of the list anymore. All right. So let's go to a dictionary, right? I'm going to have a dictionary variable called my dict, and then it's going to have dictionary variables, dictionary values like name, one, Isaac, Soa. We have age 20. We have school, UPSC, right? So when I call my date to print out the dictionary for me, right? Like I said, with the dictionary, you can also add values to a dictionary very easy. You can also removing a value or an index from a dictionary. It doesn't actually sound like a removing, but you're actually equating the value to now, the value to of a key to now. That's the same as removing. So let's try adding, right? I'm going to add another attribute. Let's say the person's, what other attributes can I add? Favorites, like what they like doing. Equals to playing games, right? So when I call the dictionary variable again, You can see that favorite is now part of the dictionary as well. Okay. Are we on the same page?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Are we on the same page?
Yeah. What if you want to add the depth into a particular space? Let's say between the school and the UPSC. Let's say between the school and the age.
You want to do what?
You want to add another items between the school and the age. How do you do that?
So it's a dictionary, right? Dictionary. Always add it to the end of the dictionary. You get it?
Yes.
You are specifying the key yourself. So there's no need looking for a particular. You get it? Because when you're trying to access it, you can easily access it. Let me try accessing the name.
Dictionary doesn't include index.
So I'm trying to access the name, right? You can see that to print out Isaac Soa. You get it? So with the dictionary, it doesn't have predefined indexing like 0, 1, 2, 3. Because of that particular situation, whenever you're adding a value to it, it will always add it to the end of it. Does this make sense? So for those who are trying this, go to my file, like on your menu bar, you see file, click on new file. It will open a page like this particular page I have here. You're going to try functions, what to do, what the function is. I'm going to do examples of functions. I want us to do it on this particular page. Have you guys opened it? Okay, so let's continue. All right, so like I said, the function is a block of code, right? I'm going to have a function like the examples that we saw in the slides called add numbers, right? So I have my colon. Immediately I hit enter, it comes right under the function or the block, right? Okay, so I'm going to do some of two numbers equals to 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, right? When I print out the variable, right? And I come down out of the function, you can see that I'm actually out of this particular indentation, and I call add numbers, right? When I save my page, when I come here, run module, it will ask me to save. I'm going to save it into a particular folder. All right, so when I save it, you can see that it has returned the value 4. Are you guys seeing 4 on my screen? Hello. Hello. Are you guys here?
We can see.
Have you guys also tried as well to be, or you try later? I mean, when you try it here, whilst I'm here, you can ask your questions if you have any challenges.
Please, I'm finding it difficult typing the function in the terminal.
Okay, so that's what I said, that use on the menu bar, you see file, right? Click on the file and then select new file. So the new file will return or will produce this particular screen that my mouse. Have you seen it?
No, please.
Kindly we'll see what you are saying.
Okay, I'm coming. Okay, so this is my screen.
Right. Oh, you don't have any file? Okay, different type of terminal. Go click on your stats, right?
Okay.
Click on your stats.
Yeah, I've clicked it.
Share your desktop so we see your items.
Okay, I'm coming. Okay, so yeah, yeah.
All right, so click on the stats.
Okay.
Your stat is not showing. I don't know whether Microsoft is not showing. Okay, it's now showing. Search for Python. You're a Chelsea fan, eh? Nice meeting you. I'm also a Chelsea fan.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Okay, so click on the stats. Let's search for it manually. Click on the stats. Scroll down. You see the Python folder.
Okay.
Yes. Click on this. And then yes, the one with the IDEO in front. So Python IDEO.
This one. Oh, okay.
That's open, right?
Yeah, it has opened.
So have you seen the file at the top there on the menu bar?
Yeah, I can see it.
Add select new file. Exactly. So this is where you'll be typing your codes from now on. You get it?
Okay. Okay.
Right.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So try the example in my code on my screen and see if you are going to get the output as well. All right, so let me just put a comment. Hope you guys know what a comment is.
Yes, we do. A comment is a code that, or a line of code or writing in the IDE that the compiler will not see.
Also, the compiler will not touch that particular line of code or the block. Don't touch it at all. All right, so The next example I'm going to try is two numbers, that's a function that receives argument, or that has an argument. All right, so def add, let me do it like this, function with x, right? And then we have a and then b, right? We are coming to do sum or total equals to a plus b, right? And then we'll print out total, right? So when I come out of the function and I call the function name, right? So I'm doing this instance, this first one without the parameters or without the values, so that we'll see what the interpreter will show us. All right, so you see there's an error here saying that function with args missing two required positional arguments. Do you get it? So when you have a function that you define arguments to it, you have to pass in the arguments. Other than that, you're going to get an error message like I'm getting. So I'm going to do 2 and then 4. 2 being the A and then 4 being B, right? So when I save my page and then I run it again, see I'm getting 4 being the first function here, and then the second one is 6 as the answer. All right, so you can see that what I've done here is unnamed parameters. We have types of parameters. We have the name parameters and then unnamed parameters. So the unnamed parameters is that you know, the unnamed parameters is you know the positions of the variables. So you know that A is the first one and then B is the second one, right? So when you pass in 2, the 2 will be stored in A, and when you pass in 4, the 4 will be stored in B. But in a case that you want to identify them by their names, that's the name parameters. You can go by doing B equals to 2, and then A equals to, let's say, 10, right? When you save and then you run, you're going to get 12. Do you get it? So this is name parameters, and then the first one that I did was unnamed parameters. All right, so we're going to create a function that has defined default parameters, right? So function with default params. All right, so def function with params, right? So using the same argument, so A equals to 20, and then B equals to, no, we're going to, okay, B equals to 10. The mouse keeps falling. Okay, my keyboard is not, my mouse keeps moving without my permission. All right. So now this time I'm not going to add, I'm going to subtract. So the difference will be, let's say we are doing A minus B, right? So we print out the difference. And we come here to call the function. Right? Without passing arguments or passing variables or values to it, it will still work because we set in default parameters being 20 minus the 10, which give us 10, right? So now in this instance, I'm going to call the same function and then give it a different parameters value. So let's say 15 and then 4, right? When I save and then I run the module, it gives me 11. Do you get it? All right. So let's do some the other cool stuff that we're supposed to talk about. All right, so let's say interpolation. So interpolation, concatenation is, let me start with concatenation. Concatenation is you have a particular string and you want to add another string to it. So that maybe you want to add, want to add two sentences together, right? You have a variable, let me say a variable for sentence 1 equals to is a boy, right? I have said he goes to school, right? So for concatenation, it will mean that I want to add these two sentences together. So I can do 1 equals to sentence 1 plus sentence 2. So in Python, concatenation, we use the plus symbol for concatenation. In PHP, they use a dot separator for concatenation. I think the other languages also use the plus as well. So when I call this, you can see that the output here is Kofi is a boy, he goes to school, right? So that is concatenation. Interpolation is you have one particular sentence, right? But you want to put a value in that sentence without concatenating it. Does this make sense to anyone? All right. So there are different types of interpolation. There's a F string, there's a string format itself, there's the one with the dollar sign and then the S. Yeah. So there are different types. It depends on the one that you have to choose and then you master. So with this, we're going to use the F string to demonstrate what interpolation is. So the same, let's say someone's name, right? Equals to Roberts, right? And then I have his age as Robert. I know you are 30 years, so I'm going to use that. Okay, so then I want to interpolate, right? So I'll do it this way. So sentence will be with the F string, you have to start the quotation with F, and then I'll do his name is. So to interpolate, I'm going to call the variable name here, and then his age is, I'll put the age to here. You get it? So when I come and then print out the sentence, I'm going to get his name is Robert Ogri, his age is 30. You get, so interpolation, you have a sentence, all right, but you don't want to concatenate. So you are just replacing or forcing or in placing that particular variable inside the sentence that you already have. Okay, so that is interpolation. So I would like to end the session here. If you guys have any question, you let me know.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm listening.
Sir, please, with the calculation aspect, is there anything with like user-defined figures? Assuming you are adding instances where you had the total as a variable. So assuming the figures that are to be added are user-defined, how do you do it, please?
All right, so let's do that example, right? Def total equals to A, B, C, right? Add equals to A plus B plus C, right? And I'll return add. Okay, so then I come out of the function and do A equals to A equals to int. You see, because the summation is going to be integers, I have to pass with the int, right? So enter first number, right? Then I'll do the same for B as well. Second number. Let's make somebody admit. And then C equals to enter third number, right? So then when I call the function total, I'll put in the variables A, B, and then C, right? No, let me equate it to a value. So let's say sum equals to, then I'll come and print out sum. Okay, so now when I save, then run the module, you see there's a prompt saying that enter first number, which is 30, second number 29, then the last number is 10, right? So it adds the 20, 29, then 10, and then it gives us 39. Yeah, thank you, 69. All right, so please, have you seen the example? Are you okay with it?
Yes, sir. I'm okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Any other question? Okay, so we are doing this session because the ultimate here is to build more Django developers, right? So I can't just start Django without knowing or being certain that the people that I'm teaching the Django understand Python and will be able to relate to the code that I'll be writing. Because with the Django tutorials, it's going to be live session. I'll just be writing the code, and like this one to be recorded, right? Because I'll be working on live projects. So a project, and I'll be coding a project. I'll just be receiving questions. At the end of the session, if you want to retry the tutorials, you can go and watch the recorded session as well. Right. So I want to make sure that everyone understands Python. We'll be able to read the code, see what each and every code is doing. And I'm aware you guys are doing tutorials already in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right?
Tomorrow, like this, we'll be continue our bootstrap lesson with Robert.
Awesome. So you're doing Bootstrap. I use Bootstrap a lot, so that's great. Bootstrap is great. Right. So our next session.
We started the basics last week.
Okay. Okay. So our next session, and we're going to look at daytime in Python. Python has a special way of handling daytime. And then regular expressions. Please, has anyone heard about regular expressions?
Not at all.
Not
Anyway,
at all.
I haven't heard about it.
Anyone else? All right, so we'll get to know what regular expressions is, and we'll do examples with Python, right? Exception handling. Exception handling is how to manage your errors in your code. We'll get to know about it in Python as well, and importing modules, and then finally we'll talk about object-oriented programming as well. Here, right? Finally, what we've learned, and then try and work it out. The group, the backend, the code boots backend group. Let's post the solutions there. We'll compare, and then we'll see what's up. Okay. All right. So thank you very much to all of you. Robert, please take over.
All right. Thank you very much, Shima. Guys. So I hope you guys have learned so many things today.